Keeping the Flow podcast, hosted by Jason and Chad.
Welcome back to Keeping the Flow. I'm one of the hosts, Jason Upton. I'm also here with Chad Johnson. Today, we have a very fun guest. I hope it's going to be fun. We are going to be talking about communication. So today, we're going to be talking to someone who's spent a lifetime making sure communities across Illinois have access to safe, dependable drinking water. Dave McMillan has dedicated over 3 decades to the Illinois EPA, where he led teams, responded to water emergencies, and helped shape policies that protect water we all depend on. From his early days doing boots on the ground monitoring to eventually heading up the Division of Public Water Supplies, Dave has seen it all. How systems work, where they struggle, and how to keep them running through both everyday challenges and major disruptions. These days, he's with Illinois Rural Water Association, training and supporting local water operators, sharing that deep knowledge built from years of experience in the field behind the scenes. So, welcome, Dave. I had to kind of shorten it. When you first sent me your bio, I was like, we're not even going to have time with everything that you've done in the water industry. We're not even going to have time to do a podcast here.
Well, I didn't bring my cape either, so I can't put that on for you. No, I appreciate it. But I worked with a lot of good people and trying to give back to the industry that's treated me pretty well, Jason. So appreciate the
good
introduction.
So I read your article. I don't know, has that been posted yet?
No, it has not. So that's all covert. That's all covert information. So you're sworn to secrecy on that.
So stay tuned.
I did read your article, did a little research prior, and kind of made me sad a little bit for those who didn't know Wayne Nelson in your article. Well, I'll let you go ahead and explain your article. Maybe we can jump into this topic of communication.
My next article in one of our publications is going to be on communication. It hasn't gone through the edit process yet, so we do have an executive director that will probably review it and maybe smooth out some of my rough edges. Anybody that knows me in the industry in Illinois knows that I have trouble with being a little bit too direct sometimes. So we have to kind of watch that. But no, the article, I think we've done a pretty good job in Illinois and really throughout the country of treating water. I think oftentimes what we don't do a good job of is communicating that important job that we do to our customers, and then communicating with the regulated community, with the regulators, the back and forth. And what kind of stimulated me to write that article, I ran across a note from Wayne Nelson, who anybody in Illinois in the rural areas knows of Wayne and participated in Wayne's training over the years, and knows Wayne kind of had a problem with his filter also, I think, oftentimes. And so it kind of made me laugh when I actually read the article or read the note that he had provided me. But it did set me on the path of thinking about how important communication is in the water industry, in particular, the importance of the back and forth communication between the regulators and the regulated community. So, and that's kind of what the foundation of the article was, and kind of what the importance, I think, of communication is.
Yeah, and when I first text you, I text you and it's like, one of your, I guess, topics is lead and copper in Illinois. And so I text you and said, hey, lead and copper, and you sent me back the puking emoji face, and it was like, let's try to talk about something different first. So maybe we'll bring you back for lead and copper at another time.
I think I said hell no. I'm not talking about lead and copper, actually. I think that's just the emoji. I think it was hell no.
There might have been that, but then you suggested communication, and I was like, wow, that fits right into part of the reason why we created this podcast was because myself and then talking to Chad, we felt that there was this gap of getting being able to communicate with the operations, lab communications, EPA, sales folks. It just seems like we're going through this time where our communication sucks, to be honest with you. And I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, do you have any ideas on where in the water industry we're lacking communication?
Well, I mean, I think it may to a degree be generational. Um, you know, when we all started, if somebody had a question, they picked up the phone and made a phone call, and it was immediate response, immediate reaction. Sometimes we had to back up and do some research to find out the exact answer. But I think we lived in the communication where a handwritten note and a phone call uh, were the way we did business. We did business much more personally. And now I think we have evolved into an electronic era where people have a preference in responding to text messages and emails. And I think you lose a lot of the one-on-one relationship development that we all had. I mean, Jason, when you were at Athens, I mean, you didn't hesitate to call me at, if I remember correctly, one time at 4 o'clock in the morning, because you had an issue. Um,
Yeah,
and
but it
could you?
wasn't always that way, Dave. Like
No, no, go ahead.
when I got into the industry, 30 years ago, there was a different, especially talking to regulators, there was a different persona. No, it was almost like regulator bad. We're good. We don't talk to the bad guys. We did main breaks. There, I said it again, Chad. I screwed it up the
You
other
messed
day.
up.
But
Do not say that.
we
I'll say
we
it. I'll
we
say it.
did
Do not
main
say it.
breaks live. We didn't because we didn't want to issue a boil order and have to do all the paperwork, which there's not a lot. But that was the feeling. And then I think the EPA gained a little bit of that back. They started being there to help, putting it out there that we're here to help you. Call us. We're here to help. We can't do the work for you, or we can't really um, tell you how to do things, but we can give you some good advice and we can lead you in the right direction. Um, and so you had that buy-in where people were starting to call the EPA. You guys had a different look. And then now it's kind of moved into, I'm not bashing or being mean, but it's kind of moved into uh, where we've had that to where we call the EPA, but now we can't get a hold of anybody. And, it's emails, like you said, and although emails are very good, I would suggest anybody doing emails because that's a good paper trail. But that's kind of the flow of the communication between the operation side and the regulatory side.
Yeah,
So Dave,
and I don't think that there's, and I don't want to overstate the case, I guess, and I don't want to say that it's strictly a generational thing, but I know I've got two children myself, and I know how they do things are different than what the way we did things and continue to do things. And so I think we have to recognize that with the regulated community or the regulators, and we have to start to build those relationships. And let's face it, we went through uh, a mass exodus from, state government employees. I mean, we've turned people over. It doesn't matter whether it's Illinois EPA, Department of Transportation, Department of Public Health. Pretty much every state agency has seen a workforce turnover that's probably never happened before. So we have folks that have not got the experience, and they're falling back on what's written in a regulation, which is fine. I mean, that's why they're in the state register. But we also need to recognize that sometimes people don't interpret things properly, and sometimes they take things to a point where I don't necessarily believe that the regulations might support the point that they're making. And that's where I think we have to educate the regulators. And as an industry, it's incumbent upon us to take that back. We don't need to be bad mouthing or bashing somebody behind the scenes. We just got to find the right person and have the right discussion. And if that right person doesn't agree with us, that's fine. Let's take it to the next person. And if that person doesn't agree with us, then we take it to the next person. And ultimately, if we end up at the Pollution Control Board to resolve an issue, that's the process. And we just have to recognize there is a process out there, and we have to be willing to commit to it. And it should not be an unprofessional process. It should be a very professional process. I'll give you an example of Ted Meckes and I were very good friends. He's retired from City Water, Light, and Power in Springfield. We both had a position on the chlorine residual being increased in the amendments to Part 604, the operation and maintenance standards. And, we disagreed. And we disagreed at the Pollution Control Board. And after we had the meeting, 2 days later, we were having a beer someplace, making fun of each other. And laughing about it. It just because you don't agree with somebody does not necessarily mean that we're creating a adverse work environment in the industry. We just need to get it right the first time. What the hell else is more important than getting it right than drinking water?
Did you have something you were going to add there, Chad?
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you about COVID and work from home orders and has that contributed to some of the communication breakdowns and say, you can't even find anybody at office anymore, they're all at home, or that's, you can't just show up and at somebody's house in their underwear and say, hey, what's going on? I mean, obviously there's a
Well,
communication breakdown.
that underwear comment's hitting pretty close to home because I'm sitting in a hotel room just with my shirt on. So,
There
no,
you go.
no, no, seriously, you know, I think we're beyond that. I mean, the whole COVID thing, and the work at home thing. If people want to work at home, I don't care. If people want to, wherever the work is, they ought to be doing it. I mean, I have a workstation in my house. I don't go to an office every day. If I don't get back to somebody and communicate with them, that's on me. I mean, whether they've called me or sent me an email, that's on me. Now, I think, maybe COVID pushed that work at home thing a little bit more, but I can tell you, for example, at Illinois EPA, I don't think the compliance assurance section has very many people working at home anymore at all. So, you know, I think that was an excuse, maybe, but I don't think it should matter where somebody's working from, and we shouldn't focus on that as much as the fact that maybe we're not getting that communication that we should.
Maybe COVID had an impact on it, though, in a way that we haven't fully came back from. On that, building relationship. You talked about building relationships, and I wrote it down. A lot of that is, excuse me, is I believe you have people in the water industry that have been, like I'm pushing 30 years in the industry. You've been in there a while, and you've retired now, and still stuck around. So that's your own fault. but you've had these relationships, and there's not a lot of new people coming into the industry. That's been for the last 30 years. They've been telling us, oh, get ready, the silver tsunami, all these people are going to be retiring, and we've kind of just they haven't retired. It's still the same old people. When I look around the field now, we're starting to get more and more new people into the industry. But I think that works both ways, that we have to start building those relationships like you talked about. And I have a relationship with you, a friendly one. And, I was friends with you, even though you were, even when you're a regulator, I was still a friend. I still called you a friend. But you have those relationships that, you've kind of built over the years of being in the water world. And
Well, and I hear a lot of negative stuff, um, and just be right up front about Illinois EPA's inspection process, and the inspectors, and they're doing things different, and they're doing, they're not the same as you guys. Well, they're not going to be the same as us. There's no way that's going to happen, and it's the way we did things may or may not have been the right way to do them. But what I can tell you is, if we've got new people in Illinois EPA regional offices that are fresh to the water industry, it's up to us, whether it's water plant operator at Rock Island or the water plant operator at Chester or wherever. We have to build the relationship with those inspectors, because there will come a day when we need them. Just like back in the day, Jason, when you needed me to uh, intercede on something, those days come, and it could be an emergency, it could be a flood, it could be a straight line wind, it could be whatever, and we need those inspectors educated. They need to understand the importance of what we do every day in this industry, and we need to focus on that stuff, and build the communication. Just heard an example today. Water supply got an attachment B on their inspection that was several pages long. Um, and I don't know what all was in it. I didn't see it. I can tell you I've seen other ones. Um, what we need to make the Illinois EPA understand on that is, we are taking those inspection reports to our village boards, to our city councils. And when we call something a significant deficiency in a report, that goes to that operator's credentials, doing his job, the way he does his job. And Illinois EPA is basically highlighting those items as significant deficiencies that have to be corrected. And that could mean somebody's job in this industry, which is fine. I mean, if I screw up, I just deserve to be shown the door. On the other hand, if there are things that are out of that operator's control, if they're a recommendation, we need to highlight the significant stuff. It's got to be corrected, and we don't want to dilute the important recommendations that can come out of those reports. And if you make them several pages long, we've always heard the old analogy: if you lose them in the first 3 sentences, you've lost them forever. So if we're taking a 20-page inspection report to a city council, what are the chances we're going to get all those water board members on that council to read that inspection and know what the important stuff is from the diluted stuff?
and I've expressed this to you before too, though. Some of the stuff that they're writing on those, we as operators don't know if we're in the right or in the wrong. Though we don't know any different when we take the regulators' word for it. If they've got down there on our Schedule B, something with sampling, yeah, we're not doing it. When are we supposed to do it? Are we really supposed to do it? Is this just a suggestion? A lot of this is coming out now. um, Dealing with cybersecurity, it's huge. When it gets reported to me, I got to kind of do my own research and figure out, okay, well, is there something that we're doing wrong? What do we need to do? Are we really out of compliance? Because just like you said, because anytime those reports, our bosses see them, the council sees them, the mayor sees them, it's public knowledge. So even the residents have a potential to see them. So,
They're all
and sometimes the wording on those, I mean, it may look like the earth is coming to a standstill. So, everything's going to have to stop, because the way it's worded even has a big impact on how it's received. So
sure.
that form of communication also, I think, needs to be, we need to look at improving that
Oh,
type of
I
communication.
100% think so. And I think those are all things as an industry we can work on and strive to make the new people in the regulatory community understand. If they make a suggestion on climate change, they put that as an attachment B. Okay, what really does that mean to the city of Virginia, Illinois, where I live? I mean, what is Virginia going to do to prepare for climate change? What, Illinois EPA, is that something that we really needed in attachment B? We've got a groundwater supply, we've got an adequate source, we have redundancy built into the source. What else can we do for climate change? Well, if that climate change thing is in there and that goes to the city council, are we going to spend our time worrying about climate change, or are we going to worry about replacing our lead service lines?
Right.
Let's keep on track, and let's focus the communication where we can have some impact on these inspections.
So Dave, I view communication and building relationships as salesmanship, and I've been in sales a long time, mediocre at best. But I do know that it takes salesmanship to build some sort of rapport, right? So where does that lie on the two sides we're talking about? Is that who is the salesman and who is the customer? And how does that work? And can that even happen? I mean, I understand the regulatory body, they have to be cut and dry and things like that, but at some point there's got to be a, kind of a relationship, or some sort of two-way street. But where does the salesmanship lie, and how does that apply to this situation?
Well, I think, and I appreciate the question, and I think it's always a two-way street. It depends on which side you're working on at the time. When I was in a regulatory position, I was a salesman when we were doing new regulatory development. I was calling on Illinois Section AWWA, Illinois Rural Water Association, Potable Water Supply Association, local operator groups. I was making those outreach efforts so that we could get investment from the industry in the revision of those regulations. Conversely, now on this side of the fence, working more for small water systems, and I guess water systems in general, I think the communication, again, it needs to be that two-way street. It needs to be, for instance, I know Jason participates in a coalition of the communities in the Quad Cities. They have a group. If they're all getting the same feedback from the regulators, and they don't think that's an accurate reflection, then I think it's incumbent upon those systems to communicate that back to somebody at Illinois EPA, whether they start with the regional office, or whether they go to the compliance assurance section, or whether they go to Matt Moss, the division manager, or what avenue there is. Wherever they can make that intro, that's fine. And then again, Illinois Section AWWA has a regulatory component to it. Illinois Rural Water Association, we have an executive director, and we have a deputy executive director, and we can start some of those communications efforts. But I think it needs to be a professional discussion, and sometimes we're going to have to agree to disagree. I mean, not every
Right.
not every solution can be covered by Dave McMillan's seat of the pants, common sense approach. Sometimes we're forced by regulation to do certain things, because remember, regulations are written for least common denominators, and that's just a reality. So we're sometimes stuck with things that we have to do to comply that don't make common sense, but they are the law of the land. But on the other hand, there's a lot of discretionary areas also where we can have the communication, and we can say, look, this just is not health protective. It's going to cost a lot of money, and it doesn't make sense, and it's not supported. And if we have to, we got to talk to 2 or 3 people, fine. But if we have to get that messaging in, I think it needs to be done professionally without offending anyone. And it shouldn't. We all put our big boy pants on.
Yeah. And so that was going to be my my question. And then you kind of slipped into it, because to ask that question to you, because I know you are always cool tempered. You're very you don't ever you don't ever speak your mind, but in the article even you mentioned about a need to escalate, and how do you escalate the conversation and push it forward, the discussion, without coming off as a a pain.
So I think, I mean, to me, if we're talking about an inspection and the results of an inspection, talk to that person that did the inspection first, lay out your argument, and whether it's in writing or, I always prefer to talk to somebody first. Um, um, I guess my point here is that we have to start with the person who we have the angst with or the disagreement with or a differing opinion with, and we start there. If our argument holds water and they see the light or they don't see the light or they're right and we're wrong, that's all fine. But if we don't get satisfaction, then we let that person coordinate the next level of the discussion. I'm sorry, we're going to have to agree to disagree on this. Can we talk to your lead worker, your supervisor about this? And, we can start that same communication over. And if we don't get satisfaction there, very professionally, we advance that to the next level of manager. And ultimately, I just think that sometimes, like the Ted Meckes analogy, Ted and I, you know, we were not going to agree on the chlorine residual thing. And that's fine. I mean, I, whether he would have prevailed or I would have prevailed, it wouldn't have ended a professional relationship or a friendship. And I think that's what we need to continue to maintain. Just because we disagree with somebody or just because we haven't we haven't got our way, that ends the communication. I don't think that's the case. And I don't think professional people should not get offended by escalating a discussion. That's how we write good regulations. I mean, that's how we get it right the first time.
Now we just got to get everybody to put down their phones and actually have some good verbal communication.
Yeah, yell at each other once in a while. Yeah.
Right. Instead of the sad emojis or the angry emojis, we're gonna have to learn to express our anger rather than doing it in an emoji.
And I can't tell you how many times in the course of my career that heck, I probably had it with you, Jason, at some point where we had an exchange that was not necessarily cordial at the time. And then either 5 minutes later or 5 days later, we were laughing about it. I mean, that's just putting it out there. And it's not, and we have to recognize that, and across the board, I will say the drinking water industry is the most important industry in the nation. I
By
mean,
far.
what we do every day affects more people in our communities than any dentist, nurse, or doctor. And what position in a community is more important than that person treating the water, distributing the water, or on the backside collecting the water, treating the water, and discharging it to waters of the state so that it's safe for people to be in recreational settings. I mean, the water wastewater industry, there is no more important thing. And so if we don't get it right and the industry doesn't get it right, who suffers? I mean, it's our customers that suffer. It's our consumers that suffer.
The only positive I can take out of that too is the fact that when you have disagreement, which you're going to, it, that tells me that you got passionate people that are passionate about the community's health and their job, and
Putting
they're
emphasis
wanting what's back.
and putting emphasis in the right places.
Yeah.
That's,
So
I think that's the biggest thing with some of the communication stuff that I'm seeing, that's coming down from regulatory people, is we do not want to dilute the important things from the wouldn't it be nice ifs. Wouldn't it be nice if we had climate ready communities, whatever the heck that means? Wouldn't it be nice if, we had, all the cybersecurity in the world done? Yeah, it would be nice. And we need to be worried about cybersecurity, but it's also important that we get the lead out, that we make sure that our systems are bacteriologically safe, that we, are, maintaining backflow protection programs and all the different barriers of protection in water systems. So yeah, that's it. I mean, in a nutshell, we want the important stuff to raise to the top. I got asked not too long ago how the industry has changed since I started. What's different?
That's
Well,
a long time ago.
that was a long time ago. I mean,
Was
we
us back
barely had, they barely
wood
knew
and
what
water mains?
chlorine was. Nobody even knew what chlorine was. But no,
Right.
I think if you look at 1985 and you said drinking water has to be bacteriologically safe, chemically safe, blah, 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 right on down. It's the same thing today. The only difference is we've added a whole bunch of other stuff. But when it comes right down to it, we're still worried about bacterial quality. We're worried about, what's in our water and how we can keep that safe for people. And that message is what we need to continue to hit on.
There he goes.
I would like to see if somebody could comment on what's important or why climate change is important to drinking water.
Yeah,
It's like a bolt on, right? I mean, it's two separate issues, and we just can't bolt on something onto something else to make it regulatory, legislation. It doesn't make sense. But I don't know.
yeah, I mean, the climate change thing is something I kind of pulled out of my pocket that I've been hearing this for a number of years. I know that Illinois just adopted a change in statute that I wasn't aware of until I started doing research for something else on the weekend. But they've made it easier now in statute for us to use reuse of wastewater for potable purposes. I think that's a step in the climate ready arena. Not sure how I feel about that at this time, but I think there are things that folks can do for climate preparedness. Um, I'm not that well educated in it, Chad. Not my expertise.
What so Dave, kind of wrapping everything out here, and not just on communication, but what have you been hearing? And this is kind of me, and it'll probably be another podcast down the road, but how is what's happening federally now? Do you see that having any effect?
All I'm worried about is my retirement mutual funds and my 401ks. I don't know. I mean, I've heard and read some things about PFAS and maybe some rollbacks on that. But then again, I haven't seen anything solid on it. Normally, what happens when you have an administration change is they will go back a certain period of months and the new administration will look at anything that was done over that period of time. I don't think the Trump administration is any different than the Biden administration was when they took over. I think that still happened. How that plays out, I have no feel for. Another one that's out there is the fluoride thing. I know there's big discussion on fluoride, and again, what happens nationally on fluoride isn't that important because we have a state regulation that is more stringent than the federal. So, if people are really worried about fluoride, they need to look to the state because that regulation is a state regulation that has no counterpart in federal regulation. So, when we get that question, that again needs to get funneled to the Illinois Pollution Control Board.
Yeah, that's been a big question for me from a lot of my residents, and I've had different people I work with have asked me. Especially I think Utah just as a state, Utah just said, "Hey, we're not going to do fluoride anymore." So that's what I tell people. We kind of went through this here. Who has primacy? We kind of learned about this when we saw the federal side coming in and making sure that the state was doing what they were saying they were doing, with some audits and stuff. But that's the state in Illinois has primacy over the rules, uh, and so it doesn't really matter. I kind of told them exactly what you said there. It doesn't really matter what the feds do because the state has more stringent, rules that they have to regulate
Right.
on.
When that primary enforcement authority goes through, the state has to be as stringent or more stringent than the federal register. And in the case of fluoride is, it's an oral health issue, and there is no Safe Drinking Water Act component for the fluoride regulation. That's strictly a state issue with oral health, and it's in the Part 611 regulations in our Illinois Pollution Control Board subtitle F. And if people want that, if people want to see that rolled back, the place to go to is to, send a piece of correspondence to the Illinois Pollution Control Board, and you get on their website and you can state your case.
Well, Dave, as always, it's been fun talking to you today here. It's always fun. I mean, you're always an interesting character to have
That goes
present.
both ways, Mr. Upton. That goes both
I know,
ways.
I know it does. I know it does. But thanks for contributing to this podcast. Like I said, that's the reason why we started this. I feel, and I know Chad feels the same way, that it seems like we have this lack of communication, and podcasts are popular now. They're kind of the wave of the future here. So um, that's what we're trying to do. Same thing when I teach about drinking water at through the college. I'm doing it. I mean, I'm not making a bundle of money, but I'm doing it because I want to see that new people come into the industry. I want to keep that communication line of us helping them, trying to help that next generation.
100%.
Kind of take off where we live.
I completely agree. I've been quote unquote retired for over 6 years now, doing this rural water gig part time. And there's nothing more satisfying than establishing, a communication with somebody that you don't know and helping them solve a problem that they may not even know that they had, until you had a chance to talk to them and explain something to them or work with them. As I said, 33 years I was as a regulator, and I kind of felt like, I needed to give back to the industry that treated me pretty well over that time, with some exceptions, Jason.
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's been great.
Yeah, thanks again. And I'm sure I'd love to have you back. And I know there's a lot of topics that we can, in the water industry. I don't think we'll ever be at a loss for a topic.
And I'm never at a loss for an opinion. You know that.
Right. So that's good. I want to, that's what I want to, that's what we hope to achieve with this podcast too, is get some different opinions, some different insight on ways to do things. So thanks again.
Yeah, just give me plenty of notice so I can get a haircut again, like I did this time.
I know I kind of need a haircut.
Yeah, you're getting a little scruffy. You are getting a little scruffy. Well, thank you guys very much.
Oh, Chad.
Thank you. Yeah, next time we'll get a fresh bottle too.
Yeah, this one's got a dent in it now. Thank you guys.
All right.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.